It's the morning drive.
Good morning, and welcome to the Morning Drive. I'm your host for today, Garth, Brooks Fiesinger's brother from brooksfiesinger.com and MillionaireWho.com, where they help you stabilize your wallet, secure your future, and succeed in entrepreneurship and finance. Alright, let's get on the road today. I'm here with my co-host, a Ford F-150 four-wheel drive pickup truck. Alright, let's get on the road. As a little warning, I got a hole in my exhaust. It makes a little bit of sound. For some reason the car whines a little bit and my power steering's going out. Well, let's get on the road. Thank you for joining me today. We've got an interesting show for you today. The primary topic is don't be a fool, alright? Don't be a fool. Are you a fool? Don't be a fool, alright? That's what we're talking about today. No, I don't consider myself a fool. But given that it's a few days after April Fool's Day, I figured, well, let's talk about not being a fool. Might be acting a little foolish right now, but there's three things I'm going to talk to you about today. One of them is your team. One of them is education. All right. And these are two things I regret not getting more heavily involved with a lot sooner. Okay. So what do I mean by that? I mean that building a team and continuing in more and more education are two things that seem incredibly easy not to do. You have so many excuses. You don't want to spend the money on it. You don't want to spend the time on it. You don't want to, you don't believe it's necessary. All those things. And the funny thing about it is there are so many people that have told me that, having a good team is important and continuing education is important. And you know what I did about the team one at least? I said, yeah, right. You know who I am? I'm Garth. You know what Garth can do? Things on his own. I can do things on my own. I don't need that stinking, I don't need a network of people. I'll figure out how to do it. I'll succeed on my own. Because I'm Garth. Don't be a Garth. Alright? Instead, be a you. And you're probably going to have to hear warnings a billion times before you'll start listening. And frankly, you probably will never listen. You'll have to learn from yourself. But if you're getting to that point in life where you're starting to realize, you know what? I should have taken that advice of Garth and Brooks and all those others and built myself my team. And I should have, gotten some more education. It's not too late, right? That's the cool thing about it. There's so many people who have started their success journeys when they're like 40 or 50. And you know what the cool thing is? If you start at 55, you can still be successful. Now, if you do the math, you'll realize real quickly you're better off starting when you're like 10. You can make a whole lot more and life will be a lot easier if you start when you're like 10. But you don't have to. You could start when you are 55 and you'll still probably be just fine. So once again, wherever you are, you can start. But one of the hardest things is not being a fool. And you can be a really smart fool. That's why I'm saying, I'm not saying don't be an idiot. I'm saying don't be a fool, because a lot of us can be fools sometimes. All right. So we're getting off started today. It's snowing pretty good. So if for some reason I shut off today, just you'll know real quick. It's because the weather got bad enough that I didn't want to put anybody at danger, because I would never do that. But we're going to be talking about team, and then we'll be talking about that education. So the first thing I want to talk about is building a team. Have you ever heard from somebody that you should go build a team? Now, some of you are real estate guys, and most of girls, and most of the real estate girls and gals, they've heard that their entire life. You got to go out and build a real estate team. But I'm not just talking about real estate. I'm talking about in general. And I'll tell you right now, I wish I would have done this literally when I was about 18. I wish I would have gotten a full team together, and you can make adjustments to your team over time, but I wish I would have done this at a much, much younger age. I didn't really start building my team until I was in my 20s, mid-20s, which is still way before a lot of other people do. So, I guess in retrospect, I can't complain too much because I've done better than I could have. But there's always areas for improvement, and my goal is for you to learn from my mistakes and not make the same mistakes as I. So in that case, you hopefully can get your team started early. If you're like 50 years old or 45 years old, then it's still not too late. Just go out there and make it happen, right? So what am I talking about when I'm talking about a team? You're sitting there saying, hey, look, I work and I, invest a few bucks on the side, or hey, I'm just trying to get my wallet in good shape, I don't even do anything else. Or you're saying, hey, I've got, a business that I run on the side, or I own my own company. What are you talking about a team? In every one of these situations, having a team is incredibly, incredibly important, and therefore you need to do it, all right? So what am I talking about when I talk about a team? I'm talking about anybody you could potentially ever need or do need in order to successfully achieve all of your potential. That's simple, right? All your potential. So, who do you need to build all your potential? Now, the first thing I want to talk about here is, I like to do things myself. You probably like to do your things yourself. A lot of people who get into finance, business, entrepreneurship, even just good savings, they have a lot of self-control, or there's somebody who, likes to do things themselves. That can be a positive because, once again, that can help drive you to do things. But the negative is it often means you don't go get the help when you should. And that's what we're talking about on the team is, nobody in the world can be an expert at everything. You cannot be an expert in everything. If you can't be an expert in everything, then the big question is, when do you engage somebody who is? The problem is people who don't have a team are way too slow to engage others for help, and when they really desperately need help and it's like, hey, I need it so bad, it takes them forever to find somebody, right? Go try to find a lawyer. What are you gonna do? Call up a lawyer on pull up the phone book and just call a random lawyer? What's the odds that they're actually good and can help you with what you need? What happens if you need somebody right now, like, hey, there's a deal tomorrow that I need to close in this company that I'm trying to buy, and I don't have a lawyer, so therefore what am I gonna do? Call somebody out of the phone book and say, hey, I need you to drop everything you're doing right now so that we can talk about something that's going to benefit me, and I'm only going to pay you $150 to look at? Yeah, right. Find me a single lawyer that would have the time to deal with that. So build your team early and build a long-term relationship with them, because, when you build a long-term relationship with somebody, they're more willing to do things for you. You're willing to do things for them. You guys can build on each other. You guys can help each other, and you guys can grow with each other. And that can be really cool, because when those team members understand you and you understand them and you understand your nuances, then it becomes a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful working relationship that the two of you can have long term, right? You guys can actually work together, and when you have a question, they don't have to spend 10 hours doing background research because they already understand what's going on there. And so, in those kind of situations, if they have knowledge about you already and they know what's going on behind the scenes, then it really does save everybody a lot of hassle. And saving hassle also means saving you money. The other thing that happens is sometimes those people will call you up with an opportunity, and they know you well enough to know what opportunities may be of quite interest to you, significant interest to you. And so once again, the more people that know what you're doing and know what you're doing well, the more opportunity you have for creating new opportunities, if that makes sense. It actually is an opportunity to create more opportunities, which should be good for everybody. All right. So, who are some of these members of your team? I would say that a lot of team members are going to largely depend on what industry you're in and what you're doing. Once again, if you are a real estate agent or in the real estate market, you might need some specific real estate people, where if you are in a entrepreneurship industry, you're probably going to need special people in entrepreneurship. If you are in the fish market, you probably need fish. And similar, right? So who do you need at an absolute minimum? Those that you need at an absolute minimum, even if regardless of what you're in, you need a lawyer, right? And that can be frustrating because you think of lawyers as being very expensive. They can be very expensive. But if you get started with a lawyer very young, when they are right out of school or whatnot, they don't have a lot of business yet. And when they don't have a lot of business yet, they're willing to work with you and get to know you a little bit. And they're willing to work to earn your few bucks. So, if you get working with somebody at a younger age when they're shortly out of school or whatnot, then that can be hugely beneficial long term. It's a great time to connect with them. Later in life, you still can. I wouldn't say you should avoid older lawyers. You just might find that a younger lawyer is more able and willing to work with you and your needs. Older lawyers, on the contrary, often have more experience and might do a better job. But one of the fun things is when you're just getting started, you often have smaller requests and smaller needs, right? I probably don't want a straight out of school lawyer to help me with a $400 million, sticky international contract. But I don't mind using a straight out of school lawyer to help me draft a contract that I understand 99% of it myself, and I just want someone else to review. And that's kind of what we're talking about up front. We were talking about how a lot of people choose not to build that team, and they choose not to build that team because they figure they can just do it themselves. You know what? You can create your own contract. There's no reason you can't create your own contract. It's, in most places, my knowledge, is legal to create your own contract for yourself. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have somebody else look at it, and that you can't go get a lawyer to work with you on it. And once again, when you have a lawyer just read through a document, it's going to cost you $30, $40, $50. When you need them to draft up a contract later, it's going to cost you a whole bunch. So you might as well get some of that experience up front and get them working on it up front. Get to know them a little bit. Figure out what's going on a little bit. Then when you need the big things, then either they'll do it for you or they'll know someone who can, right? Sometimes I've had some big things that I needed, and my lawyer said, you know what? Here's an expert in that. Here's someone who can help you specifically with what you're trying to do right now. And so they'll refer you to the right people. So once again, even if you're still in school, start networking, get to know some lawyers. Find a lawyer that you can work with in the future, even if you don't need them. If you're definitely going to be in real estate, find someone who knows real estate. If you're definitely going to be in, entrepreneurship, find someone that knows the business law. I probably wouldn't go get a divorce lawyer for anybody, unless you're trying to go through a divorce. But for the vast majority of it, that's not the quite lawyer I'm looking for. But a general lawyer, some of those other areas, is somebody you can definitely reach out to. If they can't help you, they'll direct you to somebody who can. And that should be helpful for many of you, should be helpful for most of us. Once again, they'll refer you to someone if they can't help you, but get to know them early. Now, if you don't know what you're going to be in, you don't know if you're going to be into healthcare, you don't know if you're going to be into real estate, you don't have no idea what you're going to be in, I would still go out there and, find yourself a lawyer, find yourself a generalist lawyer, so you have that person. They can then offer referrals that you might need down the road, and there's nothing that says you can't change your team member down the road. And this is one of those things that can be a little frustrating for people because they figure, well, hey, if I don't know what lawyer I need, I'm just going to wait until I do. And I'm going to wait until, a year down the road. I'm going to wait until 10 years down the road. But by then it's too late, right? So you're better off getting someone too early and changing them when you find somebody better than you are to not have somebody and desperately need somebody someday and have no options, because that's going to get you in a lot bigger trouble. So don't put yourself in that bind. Don't be that person. Go find somebody early that you can work with. Now, go get yourself a lawyer. Accountant, right? Now, a lot of times when somebody thinks of an accountant, you're thinking of someone that just does taxes for you. And, a lot of times that's exactly what an accountant does. But they can also be huge benefits when it comes to advice, right? So, an accountant can often tell you in advance what you should do in order to maximize profitability, minimize tax liability, but also accountants help you with things like bookkeeping and other things inside of a business. They're not just there for doing your taxes, and that's kind of something that I think a lot of people don't understand, is that accountants are not just there for filing your taxes at the end of the year. There's someone that you should be in sync with throughout the year. Now, I've worked with a few accountants in my life, and some of them have been very, very good. Once again, I personally feel like I need to work with an accountant locally. So when I moved from New York to Ohio, I switched my accountant just because I wanted somebody that I could talk to and see and work with directly. But other than that, my accountant in New York is very good. And I actually started doing my own taxes for a while. I think it's good for everybody to do their own taxes for a while. If you do your own taxes, then you start to understand the nuances yourself to help you make some strategic decisions moving forward, which is really helpful. And that's why I think it's a great thing for people to do, to go ahead and do your own taxes. But even when I'm doing my own taxes, I still have an accountant that I consider part of my team, right? So I definitely think it's worthwhile, even if you do your own taxes, to still have an accountant available. Still have somebody you've spoken to, somebody you've trusted, that you've bought coffee for, that you can ask questions for, and that can direct you in the right direction when something comes up. Once again, by the time you have a question where you really need an accountant, it's too late. And it might need something like a business valuation. You might need pro formas for a business you're buying for a bank, and the bank says, hey, in order to get this done on time, we need this data by tomorrow, maybe not tomorrow, maybe 3 days, 4 days. And can you put together a pro forma on a company based on the QuickBook file in 3 days while you're working a full-time job? If you can, you're probably an accountant, right? So for many of us, the answer is simply no. And if you can't do it, then you sure as heck want somebody that can, because you never know when that opportunity is going to come across. You never know when you're going to find out that somebody has to sell a company now. They have to move it. They need cash in 3 weeks or else. And that's how you tend to get really good deals. You get really good deals when those kind of opportunities emerge where you're knowledgeable about it, you know what's going on, but you have to act a little quickly. And you don't want to lose out on millions of dollars or complete success simply because you were too lazy to talk to an accountant in advance, and therefore you didn't have an accountant that you had a relationship with, right? That's kind of what we're talking about being a fool. Why would you be too lazy to get a team member that's not going to take you that much work to get, but then you'll have at your fingertips when you need them? Another one is a real estate agent. And some of you are going to say, but wait, I rent, or I don't care about real estate. I don't care if you don't care about real estate. You want to go get yourself a real estate agent. Now, I'm going to offend some people out here, and I'm aware of it, but I have dealt with a whole lot of awful real estate agents. In fact, I've dealt with more awful real estate agents than I have good real estate agents. What does that mean? Well, that means that when you really do need a real estate agent and you try to call one up, your odds of getting a good one are pretty slim. So you might want to vet a few and talk to a few in advance and build a relationship with them. That makes a whole lot of sense. The other issue you run into when you talk about real estate agents is a lot of times you want them to keep their eyes out for you. And if they don't know you, then it's hard for them to keep their eyes out for you, right? They're not going to just magically, give you a preferential deal because you're some guy or girl who sent them an email and said, hey, if you ever see a great deal, email me or call me, right? That's not how it's ever going to work. So make sure you have a relationship with those individuals up front, because then you can get to a point where they're going to do that kind of stuff. They're going to bring deals to you that you might be interested in, might be able to help you with. They're also going to be able to help you if you ever need to sell or something similar. Once again, you might not be involved with real estate right now, but you never know when you're going to be involved with a deal that does involve real estate. Maybe, for example, you're buying a business and that business owns real estate. Maybe you're buying a real estate property. Maybe you're buying something for yourself. Maybe you're trying to invest in a company, you've got questions about real estate. There's a whole lot of reasons you might need a real estate agent, and I would have a hard time imagining that most people listen to this, if not 99%, are going to deal with a real estate agent at least 20 times in their life or 15 times in their life, right? You're probably going to deal with a real estate agent a lot more than you think you are. So go ahead and start making those contacts up front, get to know those agents. And if you just ask your friends for them, the funny thing about agents is everybody knows one. It's not, I fully respect real estate agents, but it's not that challenging to get your license. Therefore, a whole lot of people have their licenses and are kind of weekend real estate agents. So when you ask your friends, hey, I need a real estate agent real quick, they're gonna be like, oh, hey, my friend's a real estate agent and he lives down the street, let me give you his info. That doesn't mean he's a good real estate agent. It just means that person knows somebody and somebody's gonna be real quick to refer somebody they know. That makes real estate agents tricky because once again, most people are gonna refer to you someone they know, not necessarily somebody that they've worked with a lot. Find someone who works with a lot of properties and find out who they use as their real estate agent and start making a relationship with them. I had that opportunity when I moved to Ohio and I found that right real estate agent. The challenge I ran with the first one I found was the guy was like the #1 agent in the city. Everybody knew him. All the top dogs worked with him. If all the top dogs work with him, then I can't get those deals that fit what I need, right? He's been around for many, many years. So I had to keep looking to find another agent who was similar, had very similar skills and talents. He ended up being a little younger and therefore didn't have the vast network himself. But he was a full-time or near full-time real estate agent who was able to help out with a lot of these things as they came up. And once again, that is something worth looking at for yourself. Find yourself that agent up front. A banker, okay? And the funny thing about a banker is, once again, we tend to think of bankers as being some guy who sits behind a cabinet and, just takes your money and puts it in the bank. When I talk about banker, I'm talking about more of like the loan officer type. You won't always know when you need a loan, but when you need a loan, it helps to have somebody who's willing to talk to you and somebody who's willing to work with you. And I say willing because it sounds silly, but when you do your small deal for, $250,000 and you're like, hey, $250,000 is a lot of money, and that a lot of the bankers are sitting there saying, $250,000 is nothing. They don't care about it. The bank that I work with, they don't really work on anything under $500,000, and even there, they prefer to keep it over $2 million. So once again, they don't want to deal with a $250,000 property or a $150,000 deal. That means if you call somebody out of the blue and you say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about the deal, they might not give you great terms. In a more recent property that I purchased, I called a whole bunch of banks up and they all told me, hey, your only option is going to be this SBA loan. Here's your requirements. It was expensive. The terms were awful. I didn't like it. So once again, I called my normal banker who I have a good relationship with, and he worked out a deal that was awesome for me. It was good for him. He knew that I had another business, so we were talking about rolling businesses together. It ended up being a really good relationship. And, it was smaller than the kind of things he likes to do, but because I had a relationship with him and he had already put in the legwork, he was okay with it and he did it. Now, he might tell otherwise, but no, really, the important thing there was if I didn't have that relationship with them, it would have gone sour and it would not have been a positive situation at all. And now I'm able to get an awesome deal. And you don't know when you're going to get a deal. Maybe it's buying real estate. Maybe instead of buying real estate, you're buying a company. Maybe you need more inventory for your company. Maybe you need improvements for your company. Maybe you need to, float a loan for something, right? I would also recommend you reach out and get to know your local SBA representation. A lot of times they're attached to an incubator. And once again, they can be a great source of information, especially when you're doing things related to SBA. Many people are going to find the SBA's a source of a lot of their early funding, if not all their funding. So once again, SBA stands for Small Business Administration, and they are insured loans by the U.S. government. So it is worth reaching out to the SBA. I have had bad luck getting the SBA to work with me when I'm a small dog, but once again, you still can make a network there and make some connections. And when I was in New York, they were very receptive to working with small businesses. And therefore, even if you were real small, they'd work with you very closely, and it was very helpful. But I know that location was also co-sponsored by Syracuse University. So, it's going to be somewhat hit or miss, but that's somebody else who's worth getting your network. Some of the others is, a title company. I never really thought about this until I got involved with a lot of real estate. But if you're involved with real estate, you might want to actually start with a title company. And I know that seems counterintuitive. You think, isn't a title company the last company you work with? But a title company can be a great asset to reach out to early on. I kind of view a title company as being the accountant of the real estate world. and so there's somebody who can really help out along the way. If you can, and you reach out to a good one, get to know, build a little relationship. And once again, you have a lot of the benefits you have with both a real estate agent and an accountant, so it's worthwhile. Now, you also are going to want to find the type of people that are experts in your area. And what I mean is not your direct area so much as the areas around you. If you're dealing with commercial real estate, but you're not truly involved in commercial real estate, like you own businesses that buy commercial real estate, you might want to find an expert in commercial real estate, because commercial real estate can be a headache. If you are involved with any other industry, you're probably going to want to find experts that are involved with that. And it's worthwhile going out there networking and finding network individuals to help with you, or to meet with and get to know. I think it's really important to go to conferences, meet people who are doing similar things, grab the cards of the people who are doing similar things but not the same as you, where you sit there and say, hey, this is somebody that's going to be worth talking to in the future if something comes up. And a lot of people like to be that person. They like to be that person that gets to know you a little bit and will be available if something comes up in their line. So, depending on the industry, those experts can be all over the place, but you want to go out there and look for those people that you can create a mutually beneficial relationship with as things come up. You can help them, they're going to help you. That's something that is definitely worth finding, but those are also often going to depend on what area you're working on. I've generally taken the approach of find experts everywhere, right? You never know where and when they're going to be beneficial and when you can help them. So if you get to know experts all over the place, from cars to real estate to business to finance to metals to oil to everything, then you've got connections already in any industry that you can step into, which can allow you to be a lot quicker to act in unique industries and different industries. So that can be really, really cool. So once again, build your team up. You might notice the one that I did not mention is a financial advisor. And I'm actually not going to recommend a financial advisor as part of your team. It's not necessarily an awful move. Once again, I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, you need a financial advisor. But I was talking about how it can be challenging to get a real estate agent sometimes. My gosh, financial advisors seem like the most difficult thing in the world to get. If you find a good one, great, work with them. But it seems to me that the vast majority of financial advisors that I've come across have been one of either two. Either they're excellent and they don't want to talk to you if you have less than $2 million, or they are awful and are just trying to peddle whatever pays them the biggest commissions. This can be a problem because, once again, they're not necessarily selling you what you need. They're selling you what pays them commission money. So once again, I do actually have one I consider on my team, but I only work with them for insurance products. Because once again, when it comes to actual investments and stuff like that, they have to invest in things that essentially the general market says are good, which means you're probably better off just doing a broad market mutual fund, which is going to be, much lower fee structure, because that's what you're looking for, is low fees instead of paying a broker 2% to do the same thing. But legally, you have to be licensed in order to give that kind of advice. Now, what I do have to advise you is there's multiple levels of licensure, and just because somebody claims that they can help you with this kind of stuff, some of them are just brokers that peddle insurance products and similar, and others can give you actual financial advice. Make sure you get the ones that can give you actual financial advice, because if you get the ones that are just trying to peddle you stuff, I don't want to say they're all bad. Some of them are very good. Some of them, do a great job to help people out. But that's probably not the level of advice you want, especially as you grow and get into new and exciting areas. So, once again, I'm not telling you not to get a financial advisor. Be careful what ones you get, vet them out in advance, and you might find that that's one area that you don't necessarily need to go after in order to realize your goals. Especially because you really should become an expert in those areas, since that's one of your primary goals, is to grow your financial asset base. All right, next thing I want to talk about is education. And when I'm talking about education is expensive, all right? And it's going to be expensive whether or not you want to pay for it up front. And that's what I want to point out. I've learned a whole lot by doing. I've made a whole lot of mistakes by doing. And a lot of those mistakes that I've made have paid off in the learning world. I have learned so much from the mistakes that I've made that now I'm able to do things better than I ever could before, and that is awesome. And so, I think it's good to learn, but that is an expensive type of education. I would rather not learn on a botched $1 million deal. I'd rather learn on a $300 webinar, right? Where do you get education? I will talk about this more in depth because education is an important thing. But a lot of times we just think of stuff like a college education. And I don't want to say college educations are right or wrong. It depends. If you go to MillionaireWho.com, you can read a whole thing about, when does college make sense for who. I am a college professor, and as a college professor, I would not be one if I didn't believe in college education, right? I think college education is fantastic. It's fantastic when it meets your goals and obligations. The funny thing that I find, though, is people say, hey, I got my college degree, it cost me $60,000, and I won't pay $10 for a book, or I won't pay $300 for an online class. And that cracks me up, right? Why would you pay $60,000 because education is important and not pay $300 because education is important, or not pay $10 because education is important? Seriously, you're not going to pay $10 for a book, but you paid $60, $80, $100,000 for college education. Tell me in what land that makes sense, because it doesn't. That's being a fool. And don't be a fool. That's the point of this conversation. Don't be a fool. You've got to be willing to spend the money when it makes sense to spend the money. In education, you're going to have to pay for it now or later. So pay for it up front, because if you pay for it up front, you can save yourself a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money. A book for $10 is nothing. So where can you go? A big thing is books. And once again, there's some great sources for books. I love audiobooks. I love audiobooks because I've got a nice commute and I can listen to those audiobooks during my commute every day. So once again, I like those audiobooks. Some of the best places I know to get them are Hoopla, that you use your library card and therefore can download a number of books legally to listen to. And the other one is Audible, and I have an Audible subscription. The funny thing for me is I took a long time to get that Audible subscription. And the reason why I took a long time is it was like $16 at the time. And I said, I'm not going to go pay $16. I'll just not read the books and read the books that I can find for your cheap. And then I had to hit myself across the face because I'm like, really, $16? Yes, I don't want to say that's insignificant, but $16 to learn a bunch of stuff that's going to make you millions. If it's going to cost you $16 to make $25, it's worth it, right? So it's pretty hard for me to argue that it doesn't make sense to go spend the $16 on an Audible subscription, or to go buy those ebooks one by one online, or to buy the audiobooks one by one online. They make a lot of sense. Same thing with continuing education. $100 for a class, $300 for a conference. These are not big dollars, right? Go spend the money. I know you're cheap. It's good to be cheap. Be frugal, right? I'm frugal. But education is ultimately incredibly important, and you can't be afraid to go spend a few bucks to learn and to become better and to do more amazing things. Once again, how many people would say it's smart to go spend $80,000 on college education and then won't go spend $300 on a conference? Right? It doesn't make sense. If you're going to spend $100,000 in college education, $300, $100, do some math, right? I think people just phase out and just accept that college is worth it. And I'm not saying college isn't worth it, but a few $100,000 for college, right? That's a big deal. So once again, the important thing here is you can learn stuff cheap, free. Hoopla. Something I love is called EduX. So you can go to edux.org. That's got free classes from places like MIT and other places, Harvard and similar. I love taking classes there. I subscribe to community college. I've gone to community college to take classes in certain areas. That's how I learned videography, and that's how I learned audio editing and stuff like that. Go out there and learn. The more you know, the better. And next week we're going to talk about how I use unique education backgrounds to actually develop a really cool new invention, despite the fact that an invention flopped. But we'll talk about that next week. But once again, we'll talk about this more in the future. But don't be afraid to spend money on education. Being afraid to spend money on education is the definition of being a fool. Don't be a fool. Go get yourself a team. Don't feel like you've got to do everything yourself and you have to be an expert in everything. Nobody can be an expert in everything. Don't be a fool. All right. So once again, I regret not spending more on education, despite the fact that I've got a bunch of majors and concentrations, and I've gone to community college, and I read books all the time, and I've taken online courses, and I go to conferences. Despite all that, I still regret not doing more earlier. And then also, I regret not building a team earlier. I've got a very strong team now, but once again, I didn't have that team earlier. Go build that team. Hopefully you took that beneficial. Now go out and do those things, and go out there and make the impossible happen.
It's the morning drive.